Hi, everybody. I'm Andrea Truejoy Fox, your host for Talks with a Fox podcast. I am so happy you have joined me on this journey of self-discovery, where I will share stories and lessons that I have learned through my journey as a teacher, as an artist, as a Blackfoot woman, and as a human being. I will also be sharing my conversations with some amazing human beings that I have met who are living inspirational lives and leading with purpose as they share their gifts with the world. So grab a coffee or a tea and join our conversation here in the Fox Den for Talks with a Fox podcast, where we will share stories, laughter, and inspiration. I just want to thank everyone who's been following all of our social media and liking and commenting on our page. I want to let you know that we appreciate the inquiries that we have received regarding how you can further support the podcast. So we have gone ahead and set up a Patreon account where you can subscribe and support the podcast. Feel free to go to patreon.com/Talks with the Fox podcast. That's Patreon, Patreon. There's also a link to the Patreon page on our Buzzsprout page, so stop on by, where you can donate the amount of your choosing. And thank you very much to every single one of you who is out there listening and who has been sharing the podcast with your circle of friends and everyone else around the world. These stories are meant to inspire and ignite your fires. So please continue to join us on this exciting journey about life. Okay, and good afternoon. I am so excited to chat with one of my very good friends, someone who I also consider to be an amazing mentor and in my circle of support, Ryan Fahey. He is a passionate person about wellness, personal growth, and physical education. Ryan has traveled throughout the world sharing his wisdom and his knowledge around these areas that he's very focused on. And I am so lucky to be able to count him as a friend of mine and someone who I look to for inspiration. Today, we are going to talk about Ryan's journey, where it has taken him in these areas of wellness. And we are also going to explore what I have connected with in his most recent published book, Your Best Decade. And this is a book that is going to remain on my shelf. And I know that I will be reflecting on it throughout my journey as I continue to live out loud, living my goals and dreams and making them a reality. And more importantly, sharing what I have learned. So I'm very excited to have Ryan here, who is having a conversation in the beautiful city of Ottawa. Ryan, good afternoon.
Okay, Andrea, thank you for having me. That was just quite the introduction, I got to say. I don't think I've ever had such a great introduction. So honestly, thank you. Very special to be on here and excited to dive in here with you this afternoon. And yeah, this is great. I know we're remote right now, but it honestly feels like we're in the same room together. So thank you for that, and I'm excited.
Wonderful. That is great to hear. And I know your energy travels far and wide. So I'm just happy to hear that in your voice. And um, I know you're in Ottawa currently. That's your home. That's your current city where you call home.
Mhm.
But I do also know that you grew up on the East Coast. Can you share where home started for you and what it was like to grow up out in the East Coast?
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in rural Nova Scotia in a really small town called Oxford, Nova Scotia. And for your listeners who may not know where that is or anything about Oxford, it's kind of in the heart of Nova Scotia, out on the east coast in eastern Canada, and very small population, maybe 1,300 people, and it's also, fun fact, the blueberry capital of Canada. So for anyone in Canada who's having blueberries right now or breakfast, they probably came from Oxford in one way or another. So that is where I grew up. And, you know, when I was a kid growing up there, I just felt there were different times I felt um, like I just felt really like I wanted to go away. I wanted to get to a big city. I wanted to be in the hustle and bustle. And now it's just kind of funny living in Ottawa, a city of a million people, how much I miss, living in the small town and, being off the grid at different times, being in the woods, spending time just walking, snowshoeing in the woods with dad and things like that. But yeah, so I grew up there and spent the first 18 years of my life there before going to St. Francis Xavier University, which is in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, where I spent 6 years pursuing two degrees, one in human kinetics or kinesiology, and then halfway through that journey in my undergrad, I really recognized the affinity towards being an educator, and so I was actually a former mentor of mine, Andrea. His name is Dr. Dan Robinson. He's a
Mm.
professor at St. FX in the Faculty of Education. He was in the gym, and I was working in the gym, and he came in, he got on the bike, and we started talking, and he's like, "You should be an educator." And so I went away with that. I didn't really make the decision at that point. I kind of mulled it around, and I wasn't really sure, if this was something I should jump on, or maybe I want to do something else. But I let it sit for a few days and realized, yep, this is exactly what I want to do. And so I went ahead and pursued education at St. FX as well, and did a concentration in K to 12 physical and health education. And yeah, it was quite a start to the first few years of my life. And Nova Scotia holds a really big place in my heart. Even now, it's been tough, living in Ottawa, not being a part of the Atlantic bubble. If anyone is familiar with that or has looked at the news, it's been tough not getting home. But luckily, with technology, I'm able to connect with family and have virtual bonfires, which is nice. But it's just, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back there and getting to the cabin and getting to what I would call, quote unquote, my home fire, which is Oxford, Nova Scotia. So yeah, that's a little bit about my background.
Wow. I that is one of my places on my bucket list to visit is to go out to the East Coast and take in all the culture and the food, of course, and just the beautiful land that, you were very lucky to connect with. And I know that's all part of your background is in moving your body and moving through space and
Mhm.
connecting with the spaces that you're in. And I remember how when we met at the time, I was teaching in my community again, the Blood Tribe. I was teaching at the middle school there. That's a Gisapo, and you had been connected with my community when you were working with Ever Active Schools
Mhm.
as a mentor to teachers. And um, I believe at the time I had just taken on the role as a teacher health champion, and you were mentoring me. And I remember how we would take these meetings when you would stop by the school, and we very much made the most of our time. And I know we'll talk about that more in your book, the time takers and time creators. And when I think of that, when we would have our meetings, we would walk. You would have us do meetings where we were walking and moving and talking rather than, how meetings are typically situated where you're sitting down, you're not moving much, and you're in an enclosed space. I really appreciated that. And that really inspired me to look at how I did things around holding meetings or participating in meetings. And I mean, for me, if I'm in a meeting and we're sitting, I'll often find myself standing. If I'm not facilitating the meeting, I'll
Mhm.
stand and I'll maybe stand in the back of the room where I can have a little bit of movement. But I really appreciate how you nurtured that curiosity in me about taking my teaching beyond the classroom walls and getting students moving. Can you tell me about the work that you were involved with at the time when you were teaching teachers about physical literacy
Mhm.
with Everactive Schools?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, Andrea. And as you were mentioning that, it just took me back. Like I can recall walking and some of the fields outside of the school there, just the beautiful landscape and looking out. And I remember even in your classroom, your former classroom, like looking out and seeing those mountains. I think I remember mentioning to you once, you have the best classroom desk in Canada. But yeah, it was beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful times. Yeah, so when I was in Alberta, I was with Everactive Schools, and with Everactive Schools, my role there was school health facilitator, where I did a lot of daily physical activity facilitation with school boards and individual schools, a lot of physical literacy work, physical activity work, and then this kind of new, more intimate approach had been starting to surface when I was out there, and I followed in the footsteps of some other incredible educators who had started that. And it was physical literacy mentorship, and it was more of a mentorship model designed to really support teachers and support schools more holistically in their needs, and in recognizing that just like wellness is a journey, and school wide well being is a journey, physical literacy is also that journey. And working with educators such as yourself as a champion, to really explore that and to make it work within the school context, as opposed to saying, here's a binder program on how you do physical literacy, here you go. It was kind of beyond that, and it was more of
Mm,
that. There were multiple visits to the school, learning about the school, understanding the students, understanding your challenges and your opportunities as a champion for physical literacy, and then working in that space to really what you just mentioned, right? Like moving that needle, so to speak, in terms of, can we do standing meetings in our staff room as opposed to sitting meetings? Can we extend our recess an extra 5 minutes within the school? Can we, look at our lunch program, and maybe make some small tweaks to it, or can we not? Are there opportunities to do more land-based learning, and what does that look like, and how can we, and at the time we being ever active schools, support that journey? And so,
mhm,
I was very blessed to do that work, Andrea. And, you were one of the incredible people that are still in my life from that. But, numerous people, I'll be out somewhere, or I'll be at a conference, and I'll see one of the teachers that I was working with. And it's just like, I don't know, you just get to know them so much more because you've been in their shoes. You've been in the school with them.
mm,
Like, I'll give you an example, Andrea. There was one school I was at in Little Buffalo, Alberta, north of Edmonton, and I showed
mhm,
up, and I had email communications with the teacher champion, and what are the realities? What do I need to know coming in? How can I learn? How can I, really not be, I want to work with the school and have solutions and ways that we can infuse physical literacy into the school day. And so I rolled into Little Buffalo, and that morning, I met with the teacher. We had a plan. This is how we're going to do it. We were going to take the kids outside, and we were going to do land-based learning, and we were going to incorporate physical literacy, and we were going to use the logs that were recently cut down, as ways
mm,
to do that. And we had some cool activities planned. Well, the morning, as we're basically having that huddle or that conversation, there was a wolf that was on site. And so the protocol changed, and the policy at that school is, if there's a wolf in the area, all the kids have to come inside. So we had to adapt on the fly, and bring that lesson indoors. It's like, we can't bring the logs in, so how are we going to do this? And so anyway, it ended up being great, and the students had an incredible learning experience. But just those things that you can never plan for, and then when you meet that
mhm,
educator down the road somewhere, you're like, I shared that experience with you. And even you and I, like, I remember you and I having lots of walking conversations, and it just, you deepen this relationship with the individuals that you're spending time with, and they become friends. And I think that that's a real special thing that, as I reflect back, that I had that opportunity to have. And so I'm just really grateful for that. But it was a lot of fun.
wow. That must have been such an experience. I mean, the wolf and, having to work with the elements around us. And I mean, that just your attitude towards that really speaks to your character and how you approach life and challenges that, that have come up for you, and then you model that for the teachers that you work with and the students and the people that are in your learning community. You really model that really well. And it makes me think that I want to just connect how you being a teacher and then modeling that for other teachers has been really an instrumental part of your teaching other teachers. Because like you said, you have been in our shoes, and you can have that appreciation for, how things come up, and you're working with all sorts of personalities and characters in your classroom, and meanwhile you're trying to nurture wellness. And I remember, asking you questions like, I'm teaching art, so, what are some ways that we can, connect wellness and physical movement while teaching art? Or,
Mm.
if a teacher is teaching science or math that are typically, experienced through, using the table and counters and sometimes sitting, and, you don't always necessarily connect math with movement. But I
Mhm.
know that I wasn't the only teacher that had the wonderful opportunity to connect with you at the school I was teaching at. You had connected with, I believe, another grade 6 teacher, and
Mm.
she was teaching math, and I know she really appreciated your sharing of methods and in exciting children about moving, and taking that traditional approach of sit, listen, and learn, and then taking it to, a whole new growth mindset of moving, listening, connecting, and learning is really how I connected with you when you were my mentor. And I see that you carry that on in the other areas that you've worked, that life has taken you in your career. Um, I want to I have so many questions about when you moved away to Abu Dhabi to teach at the
Mhm.
New York University. That must have been such an amazing experience. There's a story you shared in your book where you talked about a boy who was swimming, and um, he made the assumption that, I'm basically going to skip step 1, 2, and 3, and, Mr. Foy, can you, let me take on the most challenging part of this lesson that you were teaching. And the way you broke it down to him, the way you articulated the purpose of why he needed to um, have those foundational skills before he could jump to step 10. Can you talk a little bit more about your experience teaching there in Abu Dhabi, and the different learning situations you found yourself in, as opposed to what teaching was like in Canada?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, the when I left Ever Active Schools, I had a really good opportunity through a friend of mine who is the physical education curriculum manager at New York University, Abu Dhabi. He had been talking to me a lot about teaching abroad and teaching international and his international experiences, and how that can really shape you as an educator, and you can really just learn so much. Um, so I jumped on a really neat opportunity. So there were kind of two opportunities that had happened and kind of fell in my lap at the same time. And one of them was coaching at New York University, Abu Dhabi. And I ended up doing a little bit of teaching there too, just kind of guest instructor work. And then the full time position was at actually one of, I think, 3 or 4 Canadian private schools in Abu Dhabi. And so the school I was at had a Nova Scotia curriculum, which, back to what I was mentioning earlier, having been trained in Nova Scotia and licensed as a teacher in Nova Scotia and knowing that curriculum, it was just a real natural fit to be able to teach what I already knew um, in Abu Dhabi to students at this particular school. So yeah, it was a really, really interesting opportunity, Andrea, to be honest. Like, people have asked me, oh, you're going to do your master's? And I said, I just did when I was in Abu Dhabi. it was just such an incredible learning experience. But yeah, the story that I wrote about in that book, and I shared a few of my experiences in Abu Dhabi, but it's just such a beautiful place, such a beautiful country. It's one of, I think, 7 emirates and Abu Dhabi is the capital of all the Emirates. And so you can kind of go in and out of any of the other six Emirates without really needing too much. Like it's kind of all open. But the country is made up of about 80% of expats, so folks from all over the world. And then, of course, 20%, or around 20% of the population in Abu Dhabi are Emirati, so the local individuals there, from the Middle East, from the UAE. So culturally, I learned so much as an educator. You know the curriculum, you know how the year is going to kind of go, but then you have to factor in, how the culture can really work with you. Um, and so that was something that was really hard for me coming from Canada, where I had a very North American view of the world, to try to really open up and really just understand that even though the curriculum is the same as what I'm used to, how I teach that has to look different. And and the way that I reach students is going to have to be different. And I'll give you a more specific example. But the way the school that I taught at was set up is, in physical education, it's segregated between boys and girls, and
Mm,
so that's something you rarely see in Canada. And
mm-hmm.
so the way you taught was different, especially, I taught a group of high school boys, and I had 30 boys, and most of them were taller and had more beards than I did. So it was, in that culture, sometimes it can be very, very male dominant in different ways. So, you had to really assert yourself as an educator, and that was really hard for me because, I came from, not learning that pedagogy, not having that pedagogical approach, and so I really had to shift my way of approaching my lessons with that specific group, as opposed to teaching my grade fours that were actually blended. Even though we would
Mm,
do physical education separately, the classes at the younger grades were somewhat blended. So those were some definitely some cultural pieces that I learned how to navigate. And then Ramadan landed right in the middle of my second term, and so physical education is very unique because, how do you do a lot of your assessments in physical education when you have students coming in that
mm,
may have slept 2 hours and they've been fasting,
mm-hmm.
or they're now starting their fast for the day, and how do you manage that as an educator? So, learned a lot, and things that I will always be grateful for, and I'm got really close with a few really really awesome families there that kind of treated me like their own, and really taught me the culture, some language, and just kind of how things are done, which was a lot of fun. And I never wanted to see myself as a tourist. Like I wanted to see myself as asking questions and learning the culture and finding that 20% who are from there, and really getting to know them, and then
Mm,
reaching out to the other 80% of the world that is there. I worked with a lot of people from all over the world and got to learn about how things work in Serbia and how things work in Romania, and it was just a lot of fun and a really cool learning experience. But yeah, I mean, definitely, if any listeners are keen to go to the Middle East, I definitely recommend, jumping on and go and teach abroad, teach in the Middle East. It's a really cool experience, and you'll just be grateful that you did. It's really cool.
wow. I love how you brought the world into this. I think that's just really amazing, and it gives us a colorful idea of what your experience was like, but also the people that you connected with. And that's something that I've always really appreciated about you, Ryan, is how you move into an environment while you have your foundation and you have your values. You are also aware of the values of others around you, and those that you share space with. And I really, as an Indigenous educator, as a Blackfoot teacher, I really appreciated that approach and attitude that you brought with you into the school. And you are culturally sensitive and culturally aware, and yet you also ask important questions that will allow you to continue to understand the people that you're working with. And I really appreciated that, and I think that's a really important value in itself to have. When you go work with
Mm-hmm.
other people and people of different cultures, or you go into their culture and you learn about those people, it becomes more than the curriculum, so to speak. And I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate that. It reminded me of the chapter in your book, Your Best Decade, chapter 9, abandon the comfort zone, which
Yep.
you live and breathe. And I really connect to that, because as a teacher, I'm always encouraging my students, get out of your comfort zone. The moment you
Mm-hmm.
feel too comfortable, you're in danger. um, can you talk about the areas of comfort zones that, um, or how somebody perhaps may approach stepping out of their comfort zone? I really appreciated the story where you talked about your friend who was in her comfort zone, and she was living through your experiences vicariously. And the advice you gave her. But can you elaborate on that for, someone out there who may be listening right now and who is contemplating moving out of their comfort zones, or what does that really look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. There's another book too that I'm reading right now called Triggers, and it's all about behavior change. And within that, you and I here chatting about that the comfort zone idea, but it's super interesting because I think a lot of times, I mean, first of all, for anyone listening in, comfort zones are not static, right? We're kind of told that, or we feel that there's those parameters, and that you know, they are what they are kind of thing. This is who I am. This is what I am. This is how it's going to be. But the first step, I think, is really looking at it from kind of a bubble lens where, it's expanding and shrinking all the time. Or, like say you put an elastic in the freezer, well, it's not going to stretch very far before it breaks. It's very tense. It's very rigid. And your comfort zone can easily get there. Whereas, you want to be the elastic that's kind of out in the sun. You want to be that bubble that's expanding. And every single time you make just one decision that challenges that comfort zone, you inadvertently expand that. And I show that in the book. Here's what it could be, and here's what it can be. Through a series of decisions that challenge that, and it can be very simple. I've had clients in the past when I was doing personal training that it was a huge act of courage for them to hire me as a personal trainer. That in itself, for that person, is going outside that comfort zone. So, folks are
Mm,
like, maybe listeners are thinking about, maybe I need to just identify something. If you identify, I want to eat better, or I really need to start doing this, or I really need to reach out to my family and talk to them more, that in itself, that you've expanded your comfort zone. And so, the decisions that lead after that, actually going and doing it and taking the first step, the second step, the third step, and not worrying about, the 20 pounds of weight that maybe you feel like you need to lose, but just think about 1 pound,
mhm,
and what do I need to do to lose 1 pound? Or what do I need to do to eat a bit more vegetables every day? Or what do I need to do to really feel like I'm becoming a better educator this year? And
mm,
looking at the year, then looking at the month, and looking at the week, and then looking at the day. And anyway, so I just feel that, I think that's a great question, Andrea, and I think that a lot of us get hung up on the how, and we get hung up on, it's bigger than us, and this, I can't take that step. Whereas when you actually break it down, you think about it, what are some of those small steps? So I'll give you one really good example. I never forgot
mhm,
this. A few years ago, I was watching the Oprah show, and yes, I now and again will watch Oprah show. Um, but
mhm,
it was interesting. Oprah was interviewing this lady about her weight loss journey, and she said, I had a goal of getting my gym equipment. So she did that, bought some new clothes, and had her gym equipment. And then she said, my next goal was to go to the gym, and she couldn't achieve that goal. She couldn't get to the gym. She didn't, because she kept thinking about, oh, I'm going to feel this, and I don't look like this, and there's just a certain kind of feelings associated with being out in public, in my image, and so she got hung up on that goal, and it took her a while, to actually do that. So what she did to meet that goal is she actually just got her gym bag, got her gym clothes on, got in the car, drove to the gym, opened the door of the gym, looked around, and closed the door and left. Never picked up a weight, never walked, never, did anything fancy. And she went home and checked the goal off the list. And that decision for her expanded that comfort zone, right? She could not get over
Mm.
that hurdle of getting to the gym, and she did it. She literally walked in the door and then walked out. So, when you look at what's possible, when you look at what you can do, it can sometimes be those little steps within the bigger steps, and just focusing on those wins and recording them, and just having the confidence then to make the next decision along the way. But I appreciate you asking that. I think that's a great question.
Mm-hmm. Well, it makes me think of the stories we tell ourselves, chapter 8 in your book, Your Best Decade. The narratives that we come up with, the rationalizations, the excuses, or, whatever it is that is blocking you from stepping out of your comfort zone, is what is ultimately preventing you from doing whatever it is you want to do, you aspire to do. I think that was a really important chapter, because it made me think of the stories I've told myself. The we can come up, it's amazing how we can come up with a list of reasons why not to do something versus, why I need to, and why I am, or how I am going to do something.
Right.
Um, I really appreciated that chapter. Yeah, the stories we tell ourselves, and our mind is our greatest strength as human beings, and we can either be our own greatest support, or our own enemy of ourselves, when we prevent ourselves and block ourselves and tell the stories that really don't serve our purpose, or allow us to step out of our comfort zones.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed reading your book, Your Best Decade, and I recommend that book to anybody who is able to read. I appreciated at the beginning how you talked about this could even be for somebody in high school. You don't have to wait until
Hmm.
you graduate from high school to start thinking about the rest of your life, or how to live your best life. That can start early on. And, when I think of Blackfoot culture, we start instilling that in our children as soon as they come out of the womb. Their sense of self-worth, their curiosities, their way of knowing who they are in this world, and their gifts, and exploring those. And I think you're one of those gifted teachers that brings that out in others as well, regardless of their age, their cultural background, their race, or limitations that they may think they have, or that they do have. And I really, I do hope that anybody who reads this book is able to not only just read it, but apply it. Knowledge versus application, and you live that example every day in your personal, your professional life, and your relational areas of your life, which I would like to talk about a little bit later here. But I just wanted to acknowledge that, this book has been very inspiring for me, and it has helped me to do some self reflection. And I really found the self assessment tools really helpful, because, I'm not just reading a very um, deep thinking, thought provoking book. I'm also checking myself, checking the areas of my life out, and as I go along the way here. And I find that it's not just a helpful book, it's also filled with tools and resolutions to things that, as human beings, we do to get in the way of our own potential.
Hmm.
What When did you decide you were ready to write this book?
Yeah, great question, Andrea. And honestly, like, before I jump into that, thank you so much. I mean, just the fact that you've read this, and obviously it resonated with you. I mean, it just means the world to me. If one person picked up this book, it's worth all the hours and years that went into it. And that's special to hear. So thank you for that. I purposely designed it that way. You were talking about tools and the self assessments, because wellness, when you look at it, and when you look at personal growth too, it's such a saturated space. It's very busy, and there's a lot out there. And my book is not the one stop shop. It's not, you're going to buy this book and you're never going to buy another book again. It's you're gonna, you can buy this book, and then there's about 100 other ones that you could also add to that knapsack if you want to continue on this journey. And the knowledge to application is exactly, you nailed it. I mean, that's exactly it. It's I want to start with kind of laying that foundation, talking about the values, talking about decisions and intention, and capacity, and then getting real, right? And burning the boats, so to speak, and then
Mm-hmm.
building those bridges, and giving your knowledge and sharing that knowledge with others, which you just chatted about, is such a big part of culture, and is that special. But back to your question on what made me, I guess, start writing this book. I it was kind of always in the back of my mind. I had a blog back when I was in university called the Wellness Network blog. And for any of your listeners, don't Google it, because it's the website is poorly laid out. The font is terrible, but it was fun. And so that was kind of a project I did for a few years, and I just enjoyed it. I just love writing, and I love kind of taking the pen and just rolling with it, and exploring different areas, and kind of got away from that for a while and focused more on my professional career, and some of my ambitions, like traveling and things like that. And it kind of came back to me when I was in Alberta, actually. And I was actually on a drive to Slave Lake, Alberta, and which for any of your listeners, it's north of Edmonton. And I just, everything kept hitting me, and there was just a flood of ideas for chapters. And I actually pulled over on the side of the road, and I pulled out my phone, and I just opened the notes application, and I started writing the chapters. And I got everything down until the thoughts stopped coming to me, and I got it back in the car, and I drove, and I found the next Tim Hortons, and I pulled over, and I added some more. But that's really where it started. It started just as, I feel like I have something that I really want to share, and I have some ideas on how I could organize that, and I'm just really passionate about this kind of wellness area, and I always have been. But I really want to put pen to paper and make something great. And it really wasn't until I went to Abu Dhabi, and I had a lot of time there, and I had a really great writing space to get into what I call deep writing and deep thinking. And I was able, like, there'd be days where I would just be sitting in my room and just write, and I didn't know what time it was, really what day it was. You just kind of go into this zone. Kind of felt like Mark Twain in his cabin in, like, rural Maine with his cat, except I was in the hottest part of the world without a cat. But it was fun, just getting it out, and not, I never really focused on what are people going to think about this, and, or are people going to actually buy this. I never really focused on any of that. It was organic from the start. And to be honest, like, I've shared this before with people, but I didn't have a title for the book until the very last page of the book. And I was having a conversation with my dad, and I was about halfway through the book at the time, and in the Middle East. And he said, "Do you have a or do you have a book title?" And I said, "Well, no, I don't, Dad." And he said, "Oh, okay." He was kind of shocked by that. And then
Hmm.
I never really forced it, or thought anything more of it, until the last page. And then the last page, it was a complete no brainer what the title was going to be. And again, that's just part of the organic process, right? Like, an artist doesn't always know
Hmm.
what the finished product is going to look like. And sometimes a poet doesn't even know what the title of their poem is going to be. And same with musicians, right? It's sometimes you don't know what the song name is going to be. And I just think that creative process, and I'm sure you can speak to it too, Andrea, as an artist, not rushing that, not forcing that, and just being okay
Hmm.
with it, and not being too attached to it. but also recognizing that it's you believe in it, and that's the most important thing, regardless of what anyone else thinks.
Yes. And it's like you said, it's such a natural, well, it's almost like learning to let go, let nature take its course and embracing that. And also, I believe you're a man of faith, and having that faith in what you don't see ahead, but just entrusting yourself and entrusting your higher power to guide you and lead you through the way, and learning as you go at the same time, and filling your toolkit with things, the lessons that you learn along the way. um, I see how you really embody that, and I see that it also not only supports your professional realm that you work in, also in relationships. I know you talk about that throughout the book as well, and um, I admire how you are able to find that balance and prioritization also in your personal life with, like you talk about quality time, having quality time and choosing what you put your time to. The chapter, the yes no equation, that was a big one for me. I just want to unpack that a little right now. Chapter 10, the yes no equation, because that, I think, of all the chapters in your book, I mean, I found something so very useful and applicable in my life throughout your book, and I was making notes along the way, but this chapter especially resonated with me because, um, you know, I've been a yes person throughout my teaching career, saying yes to this committee, yes to that. Taking on, filling the plate up and
Hmm.
feeling like, if I fill the plate and I can get these things done, that sense of accomplishment and feeling purposeful and sense of self worth through being able to achieve certain things all at the same time. But then, you know, that hasn't been the most healthy pattern for me as a teacher. And
Hmm.
over these last couple of years, I've had to step back and take a look at, what is it that I need to do differently now? Because, I feel like I'm constantly running a race and I'm just not seeing the finish line. And,
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm getting more tired and dehydrated. And um, so I really appreciate how you talk about saying no with confidence and clarity. See, I used to say no, but then I would feel guilty.
Hmm.
Or should I have said yes? Or you start to second guess yourself, and, then doubt creeps in, and then you're feeling like you're sitting on the fence, and then you're adding more stress to your plate. Whereas I believe I'm now at a place in my life where I can say no with confidence and clarity. And I know that when I make a decision, I can commit to it and I can feel good about that decision, even if it may not be the decision that somebody else was hoping for, or even if it may disappoint somebody who was hoping I would say yes to committing to something. I can be okay with that. And
Hmm.
you talk about how everything you say yes to decreases your capacity to say yes to something else.
Hmm.
So while we're saying whatever we're saying yes to, we are neglecting in some other place in our life that perhaps needs us to say yes to. Um, can you talk about maybe some of your lessons along the way that led you to that realization, and not only realizing it but putting it into practice?
Yeah, and that's a great, a really good explanation of all that, Andrea. You know, it's kind of like the idea of when we look at financially, right? People are like, oh, I wish I could make this much money. Well, you can make, a $250,000 a year and still be broke. Matter of fact, people do that. Or you can make, $30,000, $40,000 a year and actually, by definition, be rich. So, when you look at decisions, it's no different, right? I mean, you could say yes to all these things, but inadvertently, on the other side of that, you've said no to these other things. So, you know, the best way to describe this in my life is, I had to get really clear on, hey, what are my values? And, having a maximum of three. I'm a firm believer in 2 to 3 values, and run every decision that you need to make through those values. right? So if sitting on this committee enhances value A, B, or C, then maybe it's a yes, or maybe it's a
Mm,
temporary yes, and I'll kind of see how it goes. But if that doesn't go through, you put it through that values system, and it doesn't come through the other side as a concrete yes, then it's probably something that you're going to want to say no to, and that's something that's really hard for people to do. And I struggle with that, especially growing up and early on in my career, trying to establish myself and try to take on different roles and really learn. And I think there's been a lot of great things with that, but you hit it so well when you said, sometimes you can just be running this race and you feel like there's no finish line, and we become so yes to everything that we come back to our values, and we realize that we're not actually spending the time that we now don't have with some of the most important people in our lives, with our spouses, with our partner, with our passion projects or our hobbies. And so I just think it's a really important piece. And yeah, I mean, a great analogy I've had with this, Andrea. I actually was thinking about this morning. I was running on the Ottawa River, and I just actually did this too. I said no to something, and I felt really bad about it. But at the same time, I had to take my own advice from the book. Be confident, be clear. So I had said no recently to this one committee, and when I was running this morning, I was thinking about the analogy of a boat. And when you have the value system, picture that as your boat. You're the person with the paddle, and you need that boat to go forward. And any of these things that you say yes to that don't go through those values and come out the other side as a yes is not going to move your boat
mm,
forward. You're looking off to the
mm,
side, you're going to get distracted, you're going to land ashore, you're going to run out of energy. You want to get very clear on those values, and then there's decisions that add to those values that keeps your boat moving forward and doesn't allow you to get distracted. And that's really, really hard. And especially I still struggle with it at different times. But I was canoeing the other day, and I was actually also thinking about there too. I'm like, this is so simple. Why haven't I not thought of this? From this kind of imagery standpoint. But for me, it's just, again, if I run it through the values system that I have, and it's not a concrete yes, then it's probably a no.
Wow. What a solid and beautiful image that symbolizes aligning your values with your decisions. Um where did you canoe, by the way?
Yeah,
Where did
great
you go
question.
canoeing?
I went down to a small city south of Ottawa called Kemptville, Ontario, and Kemptville's quiet, but it's growing pretty quick. But yeah, I did a little canoe trip down there with another phys ed teacher, and you come out on the Rideau River, and so we came out. We took a little smaller river and then came out onto the Rideau, and the Rideau is a bit of a beast, so we didn't really tackle that one, but turned around. But I was in good company with a fellow educator who knew how to canoe, so we were in great shape. But it was a lot of fun. Just saw a couple of turtles and a lot of baby geese, and it was just great. And I love getting out in nature whenever I can. I just think it's such a special part of Canada, and we live in a beautiful country where we can see a lot of great things. So it was a lot of fun.
Yes, well, I have been contemplating doing something like canoeing, so I think you just inspired and ignited that further into me. So I will be thinking of you when I do get out on the water. Um, okay, so I just going back to the yes no equation, chapter 10 in your best decade, because I feel like this chapter really um, it really defines how we can go forward and fulfill our purpose, or how we can just not see ourselves move forward, or get stuck. And I really took away the time takers and the time creators. Like, that spoke out loud to me. You talked about the professional, personal, and relational areas of our lives, the three areas in our life that we are constantly monopolizing with different things to fill our time or to do. And I mean, emails and meetings and professional. You talked about, um, you know, using your time wisely, which sounds simple, and it can be simple. I think sometimes we do as human beings tend to overcomplicate things and overthink things. But yes, I'm someone who also really enjoys meetings that, let's we all came together, took some time to plan, a time that works for everyone. But now let's just talk about what we need to talk about, and so we can continue doing what we need to do. And I have found myself in challenging situations where I have felt, somebody was taking up my time in a way that was draining me of energy, unloading emotional baggage, making me feel frustrated, and then ultimately frustrated with myself because I allowed that to happen. It's all about that accountability and responsibility. We get to decide how we spend our time. So I really appreciated how you talked about time takers, and that we can respectfully say no to others. I think time takers is a wonderful term to name what happens
Mm-hmm.
when we do put our time into things that perhaps are just wasting our time or holding us back from doing what we need to do. um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I appreciate the time creators, though, because I know while you identify, and this is a theme I see throughout your book, you identify challenges that many of us encounter, but you also provide solutions to these challenges. And that's where I appreciate you also acknowledging time creators. And those are also in the form of people. Those are the people that do inspire us and that do hold us accountable, and sometimes hold that mirror up for us and asking us to look at ourselves in a deeper way, and also who encourage us and support us, the people I consider in my circle of support. So I really appreciate that you provide solutions throughout your book, and in this case the yes no equation. Okay, we've identified these choices we make in our life that do take our time and energy, but also here are some solutions. And I notice you do that throughout the book. And therefore, it's not just, allowing us to self reflect. We're also, okay, now I have some tools to add into my toolkit here and what I can do better next time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was a fun chapter to write, to be honest, because yeah, like you just mentioned it, Andrea. It's simple, but yet very, very hard sometimes, right? Like how we manage our time and how that looks, especially, as we go through life, right? When we look at a decade, that's 10 years of life. A lot can change, right? A lot can happen, and some folks who read the book, maybe kids come into the equation and that shifts things. Life happens, jobs change. And so we're constantly having to do this analysis over, what is taking my time and what is creating that time. And you've been in the presence of those people that are those time creators, right? That really push you to become a better version of yourself. They're, even doing something simple with you as like a walking meeting, which is focusing and working in on your health and in a way giving you more time because you're going to get that time back in your health later in life. And there's those types of folks out there, and finding ways to surround yourselves with those individuals is huge, and those opportunities that present themselves where you can create time, which is great. But yeah, inversely to the time takers, though those are going to shift as we go at life too, and it's a constant conversation in our household here in Ottawa. Like, how are we, like, what is taking up our time? Like, even during this
Mm,
pandemic, I have probably very rarely turned the TV on during the day, because I recognize that, not only did I write about this, but, at watching TV or having the TV on the background, is that really going to distract me? Is that going to take the productivity time away from me that I really have early in the morning, which I need for writing and really getting into the business and whatnot. So I've recognized that, and so I don't do it. So even though it's a simple decision, it can be
Mhm.
hard for some folks, and really just doing that analysis for yourself, and for your home, and figuring out what is taking up a lot of the time, and how can we reshift that time, because you hear it so often, right? There's not enough time in the day, there's not enough time in the week, and what you value, you tend to place time on. And so really looking back at that values piece and how that fits with the decisions help just make it really clear.
This concludes part one of my conversation with Ryan Foy. And remember to download part two.